In this video, we're going to talk about the organization of the peripheral nervous system. Now, remember previously we talked about the two major divisions, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So we're talking about now the peripheral nervous system nerves. Nerves of the peripheral nervous system are classified by location of receptors and effectors, or by the type of information that those nerves are carrying. If we look at location of receptors and effectors, we have two types of nerves. We have cranial nerves, or we have spinal nerves. So cranial nerves or spinal nerves. If it's a cranial nerve, the receptors and effectors are in the head and neck region. If they're spinal nerves, then the receptors and effectors are found throughout the rest of the body. If we look at the type of information that's carried by those nerves, there's two classifications. We have sensory or we have motor nerves. Sensory nerves carry information from the receptor to the CNS, whereas motor nerves carry information from the CNS to the effectors. So if we look at our flow, you can see that here is our receptor, and so the information being carried by this nerve, this is a sensory nerve, to the CNS. The CNS evaluates the information, and then it's going to send the response by way of the motor nerve, so here's your motor nerve, to the effector. Now we have different types of sensory nerves and different types of motor nerves. If we look at the types of sensory nerves, we have two major types. They are somatic or they are visceral. Somatic nerves are found or are carrying information from the surface of the body or skin. So somatic sensory nerves carry information like the temperature of the skin, pain. If you have damage to your skin, they'll carry the information in terms of pain. Visceral nerves carry information having to do with organs, because remember, viscera means organs. So the type of information that will be carried are having to do with changes in chemicals within the organs, or damage to the organs in the form of pain, or pressure. So those are types of information that are carried by sensory nerves that are visceral. If we look at the types of motor nerves, we have two types, somatic and autonomic. Now somatic nerves innervate voluntary effectors, and remember we have one type of voluntary effector, which is skeletal muscle. So all those nerves we talk about that form those neuromuscular junctions with skeletal muscle, those are somatic motor nerves. The autonomic pathways or autonomic nerves innervate the involuntary effectors. So the involuntary effectors, remember, are your cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and your glands. So if we talk about the types of somatic motor nerves that we have two types, conscious and subconscious. Now, as you know, skeletal muscle is a voluntary muscle, which means you have conscious control of it. So if I want to stick my tongue out at you, my tongue is a skeletal muscle, I can do that. I can consciously control that muscle. So in order for me to do that, the information has to travel along the conscious pathway of my tongue, so that now I have control of sticking it out. But in order to talk, I have to use my tongue to form my words. But I'm not controlling where my tongue goes in my mouth to form those words. It's an automatic response. That is a subconscious nerve pathway that's allowing me to do that. So even though skeletal muscle is considered a voluntary effector, you can also have subconscious control of it. And one of the reasons is it helps to protect the muscle. For example, if you have a full bladder. You have a sphincter, a skeletal muscle sphincter, that you can basically consciously bear down on and cause that to tightly close until you get to the point where your bladder is about to burst. Then your subconscious pathway is going to take over, and that sphincter is going to relax, and you're going to void all over the place. Now, autonomic nerves, you have two types, sympathetic and parasympathetic. So let's look at those two. The sympathetic pathway is your fight or flight pathway. In other words, the sympathetic information coming from this pathway to your effectors is going to allow you to get out of a threatening situation. So it'll cause an increase in blood pressure. That means that you can get blood to the tissues that you need in order to help you get away from this threat. And it does that by increasing your heart rate and also causing vasoconstriction of blood vessels throughout the body. It also will increase respiration, because when you increase respiration, you're going to increase the concentration of oxygen to those tissues. The parasympathetic stimulation is responsible for normal function. So, for example, if you need to digest your dinner, it's going to control the contraction of the smooth muscle of the digestive tract so that you can move the food through it and absorb the food, the nutrients from the food. It can affect kidney function, so it's going to affect the rate of filtration of your blood by the kidney. So that's mainly a parasympathetic response. Now, both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system are very important in order to maintain homeostasis, because it's the interplay between those two which maintains the balance. One reason they can do that is because they are antagonistic to each other. They have the opposite effect. So between the two of them, they balance out the control of all of the systems in the body. That concludes this video. The next video is going to talk about how the body generates electrical impulses, and that is called neurophysiology.